basketball fans? Welcome into Raptors Today. Akil, joined by Sherm Hamilton and Paul Jones. Gentlemen, let's get into it. The Toronto Raptors fall to the Milwaukee Bucks 130-122. Coming into this game, Raptors were winners of 4 of 5. So I want to ask about how disappointing of a loss this was, knowing that you didn't have Chris Middleton, you didn't have Giannis, Brook Lopez gets ejected in the fourth quarter, and this was kind of an opportunity, Sherm, to kind of change the narrative around the team that's kind of been circulating in the media recently.
It was obviously when you look on paper and you see those key guys out of the lineup, you think there's an opportunity there. And if you're the Raptors, you're not looking at this Milwaukee team and saying, well, we should win this game. You still got to execute against it's still a deep quality team. Remember, they beat the Indiana Pacers the night before without Giannis and without Chris Middleton. So I really thought that the Raptors had moments in this game where they could have kind of taken control in a more forceful way. But it's always tough when a team is hot from the three-point line like Milwaukee is, and the way they started the game, it creates a real deficit both on the court and a mental deficit on how you get back in the game. And we see teams, unfortunately, shooting too high of a field goal percentage to start the game. I mean, they were shooting around 68% in that first quarter, like 87% from the three-point line.
Yeah.
It's tough to deal with that offensively, no matter how much offense you're throwing at them, because the Raptors were scoring as well. But when a team's knocking it down like that, you're chasing a ghost. The other side of it, too, is they gave up 105 points in 3 quarters.
Yeah.
In 3 quarters, you gave up 105 points. That's a difficult thing to overcome, yet still they put themselves in position. I just think that they've got to really clean up that defensive side of the basketball. And the more they continue to try to find their offense, their defense can't slip. And against the Milwaukee team that coming into that game, since the Raptors played them on January 4th, and Milwaukee made 13 three-point shots, since that game, Milwaukee has made 19 three-point shots per game, at least.
That's a high clip, Jonesy.
They are top 5 in the NBA in three-point attempts and number 6 in makes. So that's the way they play. And to Sherm's point, you look at it on paper and you might think, well, this guy's out, this guy's out, this guy's out. Hold on a second. When you have a team that has clearly defined roles and guys understand what they're supposed to do, and they obviously, I mean, I look at the championship team in Toronto where they had one way of playing when Kawhi was there and another way of playing when Kawhi was out. I'm looking at Milwaukee. They have one way of playing when Giannis is there and one way of playing the other way when he's not there. And a guy like Drew Holiday steps to the forefront. Oh, by the way, this guy was an all-star like 10 years ago in the league. He understands. He's a veteran. He understands what to do. And don't sleep on his offense. He was terrific last night. Getting to his spots, scoring the ball, playmaking, doing all of those things. I know he's not Giannis, but again, they have a system of play. Raptors aided some of it by not being able to stop them defensively, but drive, kick, swing. I mean, you game plan for Giannis, and all of a sudden there's like, no, Giannis, you're not taking that test. You're taking another test. Wait a minute, I studied for this test.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit different. And not that the Raptors didn't have a chance. Going into last night's game, the road team had won 11 of the last 12 in the series, which is crazy. And Toronto was right there. They went scoreless in the last 3 minutes. One basket in the last 3 minutes when it was a 2-point game. So when Toronto's making shots, it helps what's lacking in their defense. And there are times last night that they hit the blackout periods where they weren't scoring and the defense couldn't get key stops. And you see that lead. It swung from – there was a 20-point swing in the first half, down 13 to up 7. And you got the same thing in the second half. Their defense has to get better, but they need to continue to make shots.
All right, let's focus in on Fred VanVleet like the rest of the NBA media and talk about his performance. He's had some big games against some big names as of recent. How impressed are you with how he's been able to handle and perform during a period where his name is being thrown around left, right, and center, whether it's trade rumors or contract talks? Fred's popular right now.
To me, it's just his professionalism. The noise comes with the territory.
Yep.
And he's able to block it out. 72 points in the last 2 games? In a back-to-back situation,
with a bad back,
coming off a night when he didn't play really well against Atlanta. So I just think Fred's a professional. he's able to block out the noise and just do his thing when he hits the court.
His nickname is Steady Freddie.
Yes.
And steady for a reason, because he has the ability, and great leaders do, that no matter what's happening around them, the noise, the fray, the confusion, they have a focus, they have an ability to stay in the moment, they have ability to execute, and that's what Fred is. Understanding, too, that when Fred plays at this high of a level, they're a much more effective team, because not only does he score, he sets the table. So he had 7 assists, he had 9 rebounds, and he scored the basketball. I like the fact that when you're playing against a guy like Drew Holiday, who is a quality player and who's going to really challenge you on one end, you got to kind of cancel that out. And I thought Fred did a good job of taking care of what the damage Drew Holiday did. So I just love his leadership, his toughness, his awareness of everything that's happening, and yet his ability to execute in the moments. To me, Fred is the kind of leader you love to have on your squad.
Well, everyone's had their opportunity to talk about Fred VanVleet. Let's hear from the man himself. This is Fred VanVleet postgame.
Yeah, I mean, felt like they would slow down at some point, but they never did. Had to look at the tape, but it just felt like, a lot of threes and kind of back-breaking plays, and, they just kept momentum pretty much the whole second half. And they put it to us in the third a little bit there, got some separation, and then, it was coin toss in the fourth, and they made a couple more plays late. Yeah, I think it looks better, it feels better. Yeah, I think it looks better, I think it feels better. Again, we're scoring enough most of these games, but I think it's going to be hard to win, giving up 130. I know that's the way the league is going now, so, we got to find ways to get stops. I thought we were, fighting the whistle a lot tonight and just never really got on the other side of it where we felt like we could dictate enough, and we spotted them too much in the beginning of the game, and they just kept their aggression and their momentum and their rhythm. But I thought we fought hard. Just again, it's a pretty good team over there, even without their best guys. So just not good enough tonight to get it done, but I thought that we competed. I think it's just a competitive nature and drive. You always get up for the big matchups. So that's probably all it was. Just trying to be aggressive and, help this team win as I start to find my groove a little bit. But just, we didn't come out with the win tonight, unfortunately. Drew had a big game. We put some size on him early just to take away some of the screening role and the switching and the slipping. I thought was good, but he was able to score a little bit. So we just didn't make it crowded enough on him, and he kind of had his way tonight. So, he's one of the best in the league at the guard position, and, Jalen's having a great year as well. So you always try to get up for those games. Me personally, no, I think just being more aggressive. Obviously the shots are going in, so that helps. It's pretty simple, but just not overthinking it. Just got to be myself and not, kind of try to find the magic potion for this team or the magic pill. I think, for the best option is just for me to be myself and let everything fall into place. So obviously the last 2 games have been super aggressive and it feels a little bit better that way.
All right, off the top of the show, I did mention Brook Lopez exited stage left after getting 2 technicals. Some other technicals were issued. Let's take you back to that moment. And, of course, the crowd really got into it after the technicals. Bobby Portis, or Bobby, was being chanted by the home crowd. Did the refs get this right? They handed out 4 technicals, 1 to the Toronto Raptors coaching staff. Big cat Jamal McGlure showing up
in the mix.
Okay, but did the refs handle this correctly, knowing that this was it could have been a swing state? This is kind of where games change with an altercation like this.
Yeah, it was. I think when you think of the contact, first of all, you can't take the guy's headband off. That's a unsportsmanlike play, so that's a tech. And then the second one comes with the mix-up with OG and the pushing and all that stuff. And, if you're the Raptors, you kind of won that situation. When you lose a Brook Lopez for the Milwaukee Bucks, that helps you. But, yeah, I think the refs got it right. And I see Jamal get in there, and it makes me laugh because Jamal's wired to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
He's not his first
ready
time
at
on the
the
bench.
drop of a dime to get it going. So you always love that toughness about him. But it was one of those moments where we've seen many times where one team says this is motivation, the other team can't make it up. And the Raptors, I thought, had an opportunity to take advantage of that situation, especially with a Brook Lopez out of the lineup. Where
he had 15 of his 19 points in the third quarter.
He was playing well.
Yeah.
So, and his size in general was an issue. So I just thought that Your question is did the refs get it right? Yes, the refs got it right. The problem was the Raptors couldn't take advantage of it.
I think there's going to be more. I wonder if the NBA, Joe Dumars, Vice President of Operations for the NBA, is going to look at this and see if there's anything else. Will there be a fine? I mean, I watched Joe Ingles come in there and...
So someone left the bench?
No. He was on the floor.
Okay.
I mean, they had the wide shot of the tie-up between Gary Trent Jr. and Brook Lopez.
Good job by Gary, by the way, for antagonizing.
And well, look, it started to me. I could only see what the camera showed us, but it looked like Lopez was coming across the lane, and Gary was the next guy that tagged him and tried to cut off his path coming to the ball. Lopez turns, gets upset, and then like there's an underhook, and he walks Gary from the middle of the lane into the front row of the stands. At what point do you stop? I mean, that's just, to me, that's just almost like bullying. Like, I'm bigger, you're going to back up, I'm right, you're wrong. And I would not be surprised to see fines come out of this.
Okay.
I mean, they say you're not supposed to try to play peacemaker, don't put your hands on other people. Joe Ingles was right in there hanging on to Gary Trent. And, you know, there may be additional fines for other people in there. But I think the refs did their best to get it right. And Milwaukee suffered more because I think Brook Lopez was more of an instigator and more of a protagonist in this than any of the Raptors.
Stay tuned potentially for more, but we got to talk about the big story coming out of that game. Sherm talked about it off the top. If you look at the numbers, the Bucks were 19 of 39 from three for 49%, and the Toronto Raptors were 13 of 35. We won't talk about the Raptors shooting because there's no way we can talk about how you solve shooting. Guys have, shooting historically lower numbers in their career averages. But to allow a team to go 19 for 39 defensively, Sherm, what can the Raptors do to kind of shore up that three-point line defense right now?
Well, first of all, a team like Milwaukee that coming into the game, they were hot from the three-point line. They made 23 threes the night before against Indiana.
Yeah.
So it's not like on the scouting report, you don't know that they're making threes. The problem with it, too, is sometimes when Giannis is on the floor, as great as he is, your defensive rotations can be more predictable.
Yes.
Right.
You build the wall,
That's what I said
you
earlier.
understand what's happening, you get out the shooters as best as you can. When Drew Holiday is now cooking and he's doing stuff, he impacts the game differently than Giannis.
They're opting for different shots.
And you're not sending the double team where you would with Giannis.
Yep.
The rotation is messed up because he's getting into the second level of your defense. And now he's attracting players, and now other guys are getting clean looks. And it's a different game plan. And if you're the Raptors, they couldn't control Drew, and he was getting what he wanted. Then Brook Lopez gets it going. Then Grayson Allen gets it going. And before you know it, in the first quarter, they made 7 or 8 threes.
Yeah, Joe Ingles got involved.
Right off the hop. So now, what do? You're scrambling. You're at their mercy, and Milwaukee just continue to knock down threes. But there's a level of consistency defensively that I haven't seen from the Raptors that I've seen in past years, where if the three-point shot is there, it's a contested shot. If you look at the threes that Milwaukee got, quite a few were practice shots.
Yeah.
You and me in the gym, and I'm passing you the ball, and you're knocking down a three. No defense. So that's where they've got to clean some stuff up.
Again, I go back to it. As Sherm mentioned it, and I mentioned it off the top of the show. You study for one test, and they give you another one, right? The predictability of, as Sherm said, as playing Giannis and knowing he's going to have the ball in his hands and what you're going to do. You talk about stopping the three-point shot, you got to stop the ball from getting into the paint. And once the penetration happens, and Milwaukee's a team, I mean, Coach Bud's system has been like this from the time he was in Atlanta. He just packed the whole thing up and took it to Milwaukee with him. The idea of drive, kick, swing, have shooters. I mean, you think about that Atlanta team that had 4 All-Stars that year. Horford,
Joe
Johnson, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll. They played the same way, right? They played that kind of game. So
Josh Smith, that's the other one we're missing.
They play that way in that once you've been broken down, you can't catch up to the ball. And to the point we made before, that's their game. They start shooting those. They start making those. You got guys coming in off the bench. George Hill's coming in. He's making threes. Why? Because he knows where the shot is coming from. He knows the way they're going to play. So I think for the Raptors, it all starts with trying to contain the ball. I mean, there was one play late in the game where it was Joe, I believe it was Joe Ingles in the corner. He tried to drive. OG just locked him up. And now you don't have to help, and he's on an island. He's looking to get rid of the ball. Well, there's nobody to pass it to because everybody's still on their guy. There's the ball is stopped, and there's a denial, 1, 2, whatever passes away. And now they ended up with a shot clock violation just because they were able to contain the ball.
And quickly, with Giannis, you don't have to defend a three. You want him to take the three.
Yep.
With Drew Holiday, you've got to defend the three. So you can't pack it in like that, and now your defense is extended. There's all kinds of gaps in, as Jonsey said. The Raptors have struggled keeping the ball out of the paint off the dribble.
Their role players are good at home, right? Role players are more comfortable at home. I mean, Sherm talked about Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton. These guys know, they understand that it's different. It's not Giannis, but I'm still going to get my shots. They're just going to come in a different way.
And Bobby Portis, he's that dude.
Bobby, right? A lot more ground to cover, of course, for the Toronto Raptors when you got those guys spread out shooting. And, of course, a lot of ground for Nick Nurse to cover as he continues to work his team into shape, hopefully, for a play-in or playoff spot. Let's hear from Nick Nurse postgame.
Well, they were streaky, right? They piled them up in streaks there first quarter, third quarter. I think twice hit 4 in a row. I mean, listen, I think that there was times where I thought we did a really good job of getting out there. And then obviously there was times, we weren't, quite good enough, like just coming up the floor with the ball handler stopped right in front of us, a number of times, which, we just gotta understand that it's it's more of a press-up game, and we were kind of willing to try to guard and stay one-on-one defensively in the paint a little bit more tonight, which was pretty solid. And again, I think that first and third, the 2 streaks, really become the difference in the game. Probably didn't help ourselves at the free throw line tonight. Anytime you miss 10 or more, you're usually on the wrong end of the scoreboard, right? So. But I thought we played with great energy and commitment, and had a chance there. We just didn't quite make enough plays, score enough in the fourth. I thought if we hold them to 25 in the fourth, we'd have a shot at it, and we did, but we didn't quite score enough. A lot of around the rim stuff, right? A lot of putbacks and stuff around the rim. I thought maybe 6 in one possession. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. Well, I mean, normally if it stays that way the whole time, but, we kind of came right back at them and erased that, right? I think that, again, it's a tale of quarters, first and third, second and fourth. We're just a little certainly much better defensively in both of those quarters. And, they are going to put them up. They're going to put them up from deep. They run very, pacey actions that we just were, half a step closing out a little short, in the first and third, and in the other quarters we weren't. So it's not quite good enough probably in the contesting and limiting the number of threes they took.
January 16th was this past Monday, and that means MLK Day across the NBA. Jonsey, I'll start with you. Your impression of how the NBA has turned MLK Day into a celebration for the community.
I like it. I like it. What I'd like to see is the same energy continue on days that aren't named MLK Day.
Yeah.
And I think the NBA progressively and proactively is way ahead of all the other professional leagues. But to your point, it's a great day. It's a great day of celebration. It keeps the things that Dr. King stood for, that started out with the African American community, that are now top of mind with every group, whether you are, racially, culturally aligned in any way. The idea of equity and inclusivity, and we have buzzwords for it now. He's just saying, hey, man, level the playing field. Like, let's give everybody the same opportunities. And I think that needs to be at the front of everybody's consciousness. And personally, and I've said this before, as an educator, I always encourage my teachers to, hey, talk about this. This is one of the world's great humanitarians. Talk about this. It aligns with the values that we want to teach our kids and have the way we want people to act. So the NBA does a great job of putting that top of mind. I think it's about kind of keeping that momentum going so it doesn't just die and we're done with it after one day or so.
Yeah, it's important. There's no question about it. You think about how Dr. King has impacted the world. I wish in our country we would recognize it as well. I just think that the messages that are being delivered via whatever corporation, company, has to be something that is direct, has to be something that is believed in culturally in the organization, and it has to be something to me that is persistent. The message has to be almost overwhelming when you're talking about stuff like this, equality and the treatment of people and, everybody's ability to strive in life and have a successful life. So to me, Dr. King's legacy cannot die, will not die. And I'm glad the NBA does such a good job of making sure that in a league that is dominantly African-American, you've got to have the representation of what matters to them culturally as well. And Dr. King is as big as they come in terms of the black culture, especially in the United States.
To piggyback on what both of you guys are saying, I agree wholeheartedly, and I want to give props to the Memphis Grizzlies organization because they've turned into a 4 or 5 day event with their Earl Lloyd Symposium, their spoken word. They have a competition, and I'd love to see that extended to all the organizations because the NBA is my league, and I want to see this.
Make it a week, right?
Yeah, make it a bigger event, and make sure to broadcast those events equally and. To back up what you were saying and to make sure that this extends beyond just a single day.
Well, that's where the museum is, right?
Right.
Yes,
exactly. and
it's very personal to them.
It's a regular trip for us. Yeah. I mean, it's walking distance from the hotel where we stay at, and it's like every time I go to Memphis and we go there, I learn something new.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now we got to talk about Minnesota and. That's the next opponent for the Toronto Raptors. Rudy Gobert, he exited the last game, I believe, with a groin injury, and he's kind of been a topic of conversation because of the haul that the Timberwolves gave up for him, sent to Utah. Charles Barkley said that this is the worst trade in NBA history. Sherm, do you agree or disagree that getting Rudy Gobert for what looks – we just still don't even know what they get back with those pick swaps and the first-round selections. Is it the worst trade of all time?
It's definitely – right now, the way it's shaking out, looking to be one of the worst in terms of what
Raptor people will say Vince Carter for Eric Williams and
and Aaron Williams, and oranges or something like that.
Yep. A couple of water bottles. Yeah.
So when you think about this NBA, when you're giving up draft picks, that's future, and then the tangible product of a Walker Kessler, you're seeing him play, and you're seeing, oh my goodness. This kid has some game. Like, he has potential. He has potential to be, a solid player in this league. And, you're just looking at names and what may happen. And the way Rudy Gobert is playing and the way Minnesota is looking.
Struggling.
There's a lot of questions about the two bigs working together and the idea of, can you just plant a defensive stalwart into your organization when you don't have the pieces around from a leadership, from maturity, from a skill level that can kind of play off the fact that offensively he's not going to be able to bring it to you, and that's the team building part.
That's they gave up a huge amount of draft capital, and I will say this about Minnesota: in a league that's going one way, maybe their organization's trying to go the other way.
They're zagging when everyone else is zigging,
and there's a couple things to consider. When I look at it this year, they have beaten Memphis. They have beaten Denver.
They've lost to the Pistons twice.
And as I was going to say, they've beaten Cleveland twice, but they've lost to Detroit twice after being up by 17.
Yeah.
So they are trying to figure it out. I'll say this again, in kind of in defense. It's not going well now, but you got to give it some time. Karl Anthony Towns, an All-NBA center,
is out.
He's out, and he's being asked to play a new position. Rudy Gobert, like you look at his numbers and they're down across the board on the offensive end, and then you think of where he's playing, the system he's playing in. They have basically two guys in Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell that handle the ball a lot. Last year there was one in Donovan Mitchell. They looked for him a lot more on the rolling action. Like, all of these things are things to consider, and they're hurting Minnesota right now. So I'm willing, if I'm Minnesota, the company line. Let's not panic. Let's give it some time. I'm willing to do that.
You don't have a choice.
But
I
at
think
this,
they
but at
want
the
to
same,
trade D'Angelo Russell. They might be panicking.
But that would reduce it to one ball handler and maybe get some more stuff that they think they're. That being said, it's not going well for them right now. It's not
They
going
take
well.
a step back from last year.
And the injuries with Karl Anthony Towns out and Rudy Gobert leaving the game the other night, that's not good for them. They need to crank it up. Hopefully the organization is in line and they're going to try and see this thing through and tweak it. But at this point, things aren't good.
Well, let's see whose ship gets righted as the Toronto Raptors take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. You can catch that game on Sportsnet, and TSN has the radio call 8 p.m. Thursday night. That does it for the crew here on Raptors Today. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys Friday.